Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, where Reddit drama gets real. Today's episode, it's straight up chaos from beginning to end. We're talking wedding dresses that spark family feuds, a husband who crossed the kink line, a disabled intern getting side-eyed at work, and someone getting kicked out for refusing to leave their own room. And yep, there's also a poor guy just trying to eat his lunch in peace, only to become the office villain for buying a mini fridge. This lineup is unhinged. You'll laugh, get mad, probably text your best friend like, "You won't believe what I just heard." Whether you're meal prepping, scrolling through comments, or hiding from your own family drama, go ahead and settle in. Because this is one of those episodes where every story has you asking, wait, who thought they were in the right? And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We're inching toward 10,000 subscribers, and every click gets us closer to that goal. Let's dive into AITA Mayhem, wedding drama, secret kinks, family betrayals, and more. 19 wild stories straight from Reddit. Let's get into it. Am I the asshole for refusing to give my sister the wedding dress I bought, even though I'm not getting married anymore? This one is not as simple as just a dress. The writer, a 29-year-old woman, was once on the brink of what she thought would be her forever. She had her wedding planned. Her dreams were lined up. And she invested not just her money, but her emotions, her expectations, her hope into a custom wedding gown, one that cost her $4,000, paid entirely out of her own pocket. This wasn't just a dress. This was the physical embodiment of everything she had envisioned for her future. But life doesn't always honor the script. The engagement ended. There wasn't a dramatic betrayal or explosive fight, just the quiet heartbreak of two people realizing they weren't meant to last. Still, the breakup didn't erase the feelings tied to that dress. So like many do with emotional artifacts, the writer tucked it away, boxed, out of sight, but not forgotten. Sometimes, pain just needs to sit still for a while before we figure out what to do with it. Then, enter the sister. She's 24, newly engaged, and described by the writer as a bit entitled. A soft warning for what's about to unfold. During a casual visit, she stumbled across the dress while they were organizing storage. And suddenly, it wasn't just a dress sitting in a box anymore, it was a target. She asked for it. Boldly. No sensitivity, no tact, just, "Can I have it?" The writer laughed, not maliciously, just uncomfortably. Caught off guard. Because who asks that? She replied simply and firmly, "No, that's mine." And that should have been the end of it, but the sister doubled down. "But you're not even getting married? You're just gonna let it rot in a box?" That's the line that stings. As if grief has a shelf life. As if sentiment becomes invalid just because plans changed. It wasn't just about practicality, it was about ownership, about emotional boundaries. But the sister didn't care. She even tried to buy the dress at a discount, reducing something deeply personal to a bargain. And when the writer said she wasn't ready to sell it, boom, a full-blown tantrum. Suddenly, the writer is selfish, dramatic, just because she said no to giving away something sacred to her. And then the classic escalation. Mom gets involved. Now it's not just her sister, it's her mother pressuring her too. Suddenly, she's not just protecting a boundary. She's cast as heartless, cold, petty. Do it as a gesture of sisterly love. It's gonna waste anyway. But here's the thing that gets glossed over. That dress isn't a wasted item. It's a wound. It's a memory. It's a symbol of something she had to grieve. And not every wound is ready to be turned into someone else's fairy tale just because it's available. And the sister? She's not even struggling. She could afford her own dress. She's not asking because she needs help. She's asking because she doesn't want to spend the money. That entitlement the writer mentioned earlier, it's written all over this situation. The writer isn't being petty. She's preserving something that once mattered deeply to her. Saying no doesn't make her cruel. It makes her human. People don't always understand the quiet pain attached to objects, but that doesn't mean they get to claim them. So, is she the asshole for refusing to give her sister the dress? Absolutely not. This situation reveals something deeper than a sibling squabble. It's about how some people see emotional value and how others overlook it when it doesn't serve them. The writer stood her ground against manipulation masked as love. And sometimes that's the hardest and most necessary thing to do. Am I the asshole for blowing up at my parents for something my adult sister did? Let's set the stage. The writer, a 26-year-old woman, poured her energy into planning a surprise birthday party for her husband. Not just any party, one of those events where every detail is intentional, thoughtful, personal. This wasn't just about cake and balloons, it was about love, a gesture, a celebration of someone she truly cares for. She even went so far as to bake a homemade cake. Real effort, real time, the kind of thing you do because someone matters to you. And like many people do when managing a big event, she asked her parents to help with setup, but she made one very specific request: do not bring Amy. Amy, her older sister, has a well-documented lifelong struggle with food, and this isn't some petty jab or exaggerated anecdote. The writer explains with compassion. Amy was bullied growing up, she turned to food for comfort, and unfortunately, that relationship with food followed her into adulthood. Still, even understanding that, the writer knew that setting up a table full of snacks, drinks, and frosting heavy desserts in front of Amy, unsupervised, was risky. So she asked for what she thought was a reasonable boundary, but the parents, they disregarded that request, showed up with Amy anyway. Why? Because it wouldn't be fair to exclude her. And just like that, the very boundary the writer tried to set, the one she needed for the success of the day for the sake of her husband's surprise, was ignored, dismissed. Now here's where things unravel. The writer, swamped with party prep, trusted that her instructions were heard. She even gave Amy some light tasks, trying to include her, trying not to be harsh. But you can't be everywhere at once when hosting. And that's when it happened. The kitchen, the frosting, the moment. Amy was caught red-handed, literally, with the fridge open, eating spoonfuls of frosting straight from the mixing bowl. Not a tiny taste. Not a finger swipe. Half the batch, gone. The kind of thing you want to scream about but also cry over. Amy's face crumpled instantly. Tears, apologies, the guilt hitting her hard. You could tell she regretted it the moment she got caught. And in that moment, it wasn't just about cake anymore. This was a painful cycle playing out in real time, one that's probably played out over and over again in their family dynamics. But here's what really made it worse: the parents' reaction. The writer's mother swooped in with, "It's not that big of a deal." Her father, suggesting store-bought frosting. And when the writer explained calmly that her husband avoids those kinds of ingredients, they had the audacity to say, "Just don't tell him." Let that sink in. Their solution to this violation was to lie, to dismiss the effort, to replace something handcrafted with something generic, and to gaslight the writer into pretending it never mattered in the first place. That's the point where this stops being about frosting. This is about respect, about being heard, about how emotional labor and planning are so easily undermined when people can't honor a simple request. The writer finally reached her limit and made her stance clear. This wasn't about Amy alone. This was about them, the parents who refused to set boundaries, who allowed the situation to unfold by ignoring a direct plea. And here's the kicker. Amy felt bad. Amy knew she crossed a line. It was the parents who stood there acting like none of it mattered. But instead of listening, the parents doubled down, told the writer she was being insensitive, dramatic, stubborn. That's when they left. And now, the silent treatment. Amy, the one who actually did something wrong, apologized. She owned up. But the parents, they're punishing the writer for having the nerve to be upset that her plans were derailed, her efforts dismissed, and her boundaries ignored. So let's really ask, is the writer the asshole for blowing up? Absolutely not. She wasn't cruel, she wasn't harsh, she just stood up for herself, for her husband's special day, and for the work she put into making it meaningful. Sometimes blowing up is just finally saying what's been building up for years. This wasn't a frosting mishap. This was a family pattern. Years of ignored boundaries, emotional enabling, and guilt tripping all bubbling over in one heartbreaking moment. The writer didn't overreact. She reacted like someone who's been carrying the weight of emotional responsibility for far too long and finally put it down. Let them give the silent treatment. Silence can be a gift when it's been this loud for so long. Am I the asshole for calling myself disabled in front of a disabled person? The writer, an 18-year-old woman, had just stepped into the next chapter of her life. A new internship, a fresh start. That shaky but hopeful feeling of being on the edge of something promising. And like many internships, this one kicked off with a company barbecue. Nothing too serious. Just a laid-back gathering at the boss's house. Good food, easy small talk, and a chance to be seen as more than just the new intern. About 25 people were expected. A volleyball net was set up, laughter carried across the lawn, and after dinner, the crowd started drifting toward the net, dividing into teams, swapping jokes, getting ready to play. Then it happened. Someone invited the writer to join in. Just a simple ask, but she declined politely. She explained that she couldn't play because of a disability. No long-winded explanation, no dramatic reveal, just the truth, quietly offered, because really it wasn't a big deal. It was simply a boundary, a fact of her life. Now here's where things shift. A co-worker, another woman also disabled who uses a wheelchair, overheard her, and instead of empathy or curiosity, she responded with a sharp look. Disbelief. She scoffed at the idea that the writer could even be disabled at all. After all, she could walk. She looked fine, no obvious impairments. And with that one statement, the air shifted from lighthearted to cold. Accusatory. This wasn't a stranger on the internet or someone yelling in traffic. This was a peer, a fellow member of a community that should understand how wide and varied disability really is. And yet, here she was deciding who got to claim that label and who didn't. Let's stop here for a moment, because this is where many people forget a painful truth. Not all disabilities are visible. The writer tried to explain, still caught off guard, still likely trying to stay respectful in a space that had suddenly turned hostile. She talked about her rare genetic condition, surgeries, years of childhood spent in hospitals instead of classrooms, learning online while recovering, not being able to run, not being able to jump or pivot, the daily limitations that linger, invisible to the naked eye but undeniable to her body. She wasn't looking for pity, she wasn't making a scene. She was just trying to explain something deeply personal because someone demanded she prove her pain. And still, her coworker refused to accept it, argued, dismissed her words, told her that what she lived with didn't really count as a disability. The writer, still so young, still new to the workplace, still likely trying to find her footing, was left standing there, unsure, embarrassed, second-guessing her own experience, feeling like maybe, just maybe, she had overstepped by using the word disabled. So she did what a lot of people do when the energy in the room turns suffocating. She left. She didn't yell, she didn't fight, she just removed herself quietly, because sometimes you don't have the strength to carry someone else's judgment and your own truth in the same breath. Now, let's get to the question. Am I the asshole for calling myself disabled in front of my disabled coworker? Absolutely not. The writer isn't the villain here. She isn't even in the wrong. What happened to her is something that far too many people with invisible disabilities experience. The assumption that if it isn't visible, it isn't real. It's a damaging mindset. One that traps people in silence, forcing them to justify why their pain, their limitations, their reality even matters. It pits people with disabilities against each other as if there's some kind of competition for who suffers enough to qualify. And the worst part? It doesn't just come from strangers. It can come from people who should understand, from those inside the community who think they get to draw the line on whose experience counts. But here's the truth. Disability isn't one shape. It isn't one face. It isn't one definition. Some people use canes, some use wheelchairs, some have chronic fatigue, some can't regulate their joints, some have neurological differences, some are born with things most people will never see, and all of them deserve to be believed. The writer wasn't trying to take space from anyone. She wasn't trying to center herself. She was simply trying to advocate for her body. And that takes courage. The aftermath? The writer posted her story, raw and unsure, still asking if maybe, just maybe, she'd crossed the line. And the support poured in. Stories from others with invisible disabilities. Stories from people who've been questioned, doubted, dismissed. She learned something valuable, and her update says it all. She's going to start using the term invisible disability, not because she has to justify herself, but because she knows awareness matters. This wasn't about a barbecue or a game of volleyball. This was about ownership, about standing in your truth even when someone else tries to shrink it down. So no, the writer is not the asshole. She's a reminder that your disability doesn't have to be seen to be real, and that claiming your truth quietly, gently, firmly is always your right. Am I the asshole for not leaving the apartment for a week? Grief. It has a way of making everything heavier. Words, silences, even the air. And in the middle of that weight, we meet the writer, a boyfriend, a partner, someone who didn't ask for a storm, but now finds himself trying to stand still in one. The writer's girlfriend has just lost someone close to her, a real gutting kind of loss, the kind that makes the world feel unrecognizable. She's deep in mourning, and in that fragile, emotionally charged space, she asks the writer to do something big, leave their shared apartment for an entire week. Not because they fought, not because he said the wrong thing, but because she wanted to grieve in solitude, alone. And honestly, that's not an unreasonable ask in theory. Everyone grieves differently. Some need company, others need silence. Space can be a gift, but only when it's something that can actually be given. Here's where it gets complicated. The writer said no. Not out of spite, not because he didn't care, but because, simply put, he had nowhere to go. His family, too far away. His friends, their doors weren't open. And a hotel, 1 week in a city, especially last minute, adds up fast. It's not just an inconvenience. It's a financial burden, a choice between comfort and cost. And the writer chose to be practical, something many people do when emotions are already running high and money is tight. He even asked his girlfriend if she could help cover the cost. Not to push the burden onto her, but to meet halfway. But she couldn't. Her money was already spoken for, tied up in funeral expenses. The heartbreaking logistics no one ever wants to handle, but someone always has to. So she was upset. Not just sad, not just overwhelmed, but angry now too. She told him that by staying in the apartment, he was making things worse. And let's be real. When someone you love is grieving, the last thing you want is to be seen as the source of their pain. But what was the writer supposed to do? Sleep in his car? Max out a credit card just to avoid making things worse? It's not like he was throwing parties in the living room or asking her to get over it. He simply had no safe place to go. That's what makes this so complex. Is it selfish to prioritize your own basic needs in the face of someone else's grief? Because that's what we're really asking here. And here's where it stings. The writer didn't get support from his friends either. They were quick to say he should give her space, sure, but not one of them offered their couch, a guest room, or even split the cost of a motel. People love to offer advice when they don't have to bear the cost of it. Let's take a step back and look at the whole picture. This isn't a story about someone being cold. This is a story about two people trying to navigate grief. One experiencing it directly, and the other trying to be supportive without losing his own footing. The girlfriend needed space. The writer needed shelter. Two very human, very real needs, crashing into each other in a space that used to feel like home. But now that home feels tense, quiet in the worst kind of way. And so he asked, am I the asshole for not leaving the apartment for a week? No. The answer is no. He didn't dismiss her pain. He didn't invalidate her grief. He simply explained that he couldn't vanish because being there was not a matter of choice. It was a matter of survival. And what we sometimes forget is that two people can be hurting at the same time in completely different ways. One can grieve the loss of a loved one. The other can grieve the loss of connection, of stability, of not knowing where they belong in the middle of someone else's pain. And maybe the hardest part? There's no villain here. Just two people trying to do the best they can in a moment that neither of them asked for. The writer isn't the asshole. He's just stuck between love and logistics, between compassion and reality. And sometimes, no matter how much you want to, you can't disappear just to make someone else's grief more manageable, especially when your own life is hanging on by a thread. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about understanding. And that's something both of them are going to need more of if this relationship is going to survive the quiet after the storm. Am I the asshole for refusing to wear body makeup for my friend's wedding? Weddings are supposed to be joyful, hopeful even, a celebration of love, of commitment, of friendship. But sometimes, beneath the rose petals and champagne toasts, there are shadows. And this story, writer's story, is about what happens when those shadows creep in from the people you least expect. The writer had been asked to be maid of honor at her best friend's wedding, a role of deep meaning, a symbol of decades of friendship. She was thrilled, overjoyed, and why wouldn't she be? That kind of trust, that kind of love between friends, it means something. It says, "You are my person." But the request came with a condition. The writer lives with psoriasis, a chronic skin condition that, while not contagious or harmful to others, marks the skin in red, often inflamed patches. For years, she's managed it, cared for it, accepted it. Not always easy, but she's reached a place of peace with her own body, a place of confidence, a place of quiet dignity. Yet her friend asked her to cover it up with body makeup. Now let's pause for a second and really sit with that. This isn't about putting on a little blush or lipstick to look cute for pictures. This is about coating over most of her limbs with heavy makeup that would irritate, inflame, and potentially crack her skin. Not just uncomfortable, painful, possibly triggering infections. And why? So that her skin wouldn't distract. The writer, trying to be kind, trying to be accommodating, offered a solution, a compromise. She suggested long sleeves, a longer dress, something that would suit the wedding theme and spare her body from agony. But no, her friend was insistent. The dress was chosen. It was strapless, midi-length, and a shawl wouldn't go. And the mask slipped a little more, because the friend didn't just want beautiful memories. She wanted curated aesthetics, flawless snapshots, a visual story unmarred by real life. Unblemished skin, perfect silhouettes, clean lines. The writer said no, gently but firmly. She explained her condition, explained her limits, but her friend's response was blunt, cruel in its clarity. Either wear the body makeup or don't come at all. Let that sink in. After 30 years of friendship, the answer to one vulnerable boundary was exile. And here's where the story deepens, because days later, the fiancé calls, and what the writer thought was just vanity or insensitivity turns out to be manipulation. Her friend, this woman she loved like a sister, had been pushed, bullied, poisoned by whispers from her future mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who found the very sight of the writer's skin disgusting. They claimed no one would be able to eat, to smile, to enjoy the wedding with the writer there, that her psoriasis would ruin everything. The mother-in-law even threatened to stop the wedding altogether if the writer came uncovered. This wasn't about makeup. This was a campaign to erase someone who didn't fit their image of perfection. And the worst part, for a moment, maybe longer, her friend believed them. She let their ugliness seep into her own thoughts, allowed them to convince her that the person who had stood by her for decades was suddenly a liability, an eyesore, an embarrassment. And yet, when the truth came out, the apology came too. Tears, guilt, pain. The recognition that this was never about love or celebration, it was about control. It was about pleasing the unpleasable, about giving into pressure that had no place in something as sacred as a wedding. The writer was left holding a shattered mirror of a friendship, one she'd thought unbreakable. She doesn't know what to do. She still loves her friend, still wants to believe they can come back from this. But she's also hurt, deeply. Because when someone asks you to hide who you are, not for your comfort, but for theirs, what does that say about how they see you? Let's be clear. The writer is not the asshole. She's someone who has endured a lifelong condition with strength and grace. She's someone who was willing to compromise, just not at the cost of her health. She stood her ground not to be difficult, but to protect herself, to refuse to shrink into someone else's idea of acceptable. And honestly, that takes guts. That takes self-respect. That takes a kind of quiet bravery that's easy to overlook, especially in a world that so often demands women sacrifice their comfort for the sake of appearances. The real villains here are the in-laws, spewing cruelty under the guise of tradition or presentation. And the friend, while remorseful now, made a choice to side with them when it mattered most. That's a wound that won't heal with one phone call and an apology. Whether the wedding goes forward, Whether the writer stands at the altar as maid of honor or as a ghost of what might have been, that's still unclear. But one thing is certain, no one should be asked to make themselves invisible to be loved. And if your presence ruins someone's day simply by being real, by being human, by being you, then maybe the problem was never you in the first place. Am I the asshole for locking the office fridge after someone kept stealing my lunch? There's something sacred about the lunch you pack for work. It might sound silly, but think about it. That container of leftovers or carefully crafted sandwich isn't just food, it's a piece of your routine. It's the small comfort in the middle of a long, draining workday. It's the thing that gives you just a little burst of energy to get through the emails, the meetings, and the endless nonsense. But for the writer, that sacred lunch, it kept disappearing. Not once, not twice, 5 times. 5 whole homemade meals, gone, just like that. No note, no apology, not even a passive-aggressive post-it. Each time, the writer would go to the fridge, probably expecting to find a neatly packed container, and find nothing. Just an empty space where lunch used to be. A void, a betrayal. In the workplace, no less. And here's the part that really stings. When the writer brought it up in the group chat, not accusing anyone, not pointing fingers, just trying to appeal to common decency, he was met with apathy. Generic replies like, "Ugh, that sucks," or "some people are the worst." Vague sympathy, zero accountability. So, what do you do when everyone around you shrugs their shoulders and pretends it's not happening? You adapt. The writer took matters into his own hands. He bought a small fridge, just enough space for his meal and a drink. Nothing flashy, no neon lights or keep out signs, just a humble fridge under his desk. He even added a small lock, not because he wanted to look like Fort Knox, but because, honestly, at this point, trust was gone. And finally, peace. For the first time in weeks, he could look forward to his lunch without wondering if someone had already helped themselves to it. That tiny fridge, it was working. But peace, it seems, doesn't sit well with everyone. Enter Dana. During lunch, she decided to make her feelings known. She called the fridge weird and selfish. Accused the writer of being not part of the team. Imagine that. Not the thief, not the person violating boundaries, but the guy protecting his own lunch was suddenly the problem. Dana went as far as to say that if the writer was that worried, he should have just brought snacks or microwave meals he wouldn't mind losing. That right there is where things take a turn. Because now it's not just about food. It's about entitlement. About someone deciding that your personal effort, your home-cooked meals, your money, your time isn't worth protecting. That you should expect it to be stolen. That you should lower your standards so others don't have to be inconvenienced by your boundaries. And the peanut gallery, they chimed in too. Little jabs like, "Don't let him see your lunch, he might lock it up," and "We get it, you're special." Those barbs might sound like jokes, but there's something sharp underneath them. Mockery aimed at someone who refused to keep getting walked over. So now the writer is left asking the question so many of us have when we finally put our foot down. Am I the asshole? Let's be clear. Absolutely not. What the writer did wasn't selfish. It was self-preservation. A reasonable, simple solution to an issue that his coworkers refused to acknowledge. He didn't install cameras, he didn't shame anyone publicly, he didn't demand a company-wide investigation. He simply chose to remove himself from the situation quietly, respectfully. And yet he was met with side eyes and whispers, as if taking care of himself was some sort of crime. But here's the truth. There's nothing weird about setting a boundary when others refuse to respect the basic rules of decency. There's nothing paranoid about wanting to eat the lunch you packed with your own hands. If anything, it's weird that a grown adult thinks it's okay to help themselves to someone else's food and expects you to just deal with it. This isn't kindergarten. No one's trading juice boxes. This is a workplace, and grown adults should know better. What's even more frustrating, the fact that the thief, whoever it is still anonymous. No one's come forward, no one's apologized, yet the blame has somehow landed on the writer for protecting himself because he made them uncomfortable by refusing to be a doormat. So if you're asking, am I the asshole for locking up my lunch? You're asking the wrong question. The real question is, Why are people so offended when you take away their opportunity to take advantage of you? Let that one simmer, just like the writer's lunch finally got to, in his own fridge, safe, untouched. And honestly, that's exactly how it should be. Am I the asshole for refusing to do something special on my wedding day for my sister because she refused to do something for me at hers? Weddings. They're supposed to be about love, about beginnings, about two people stepping into the next chapter of their lives surrounded by family, friends, laughter, and support. But sometimes, weddings bring out the cracks that have always been there. And for the writer, those cracks started forming 2 years ago at her sister Jessica's wedding. Let's rewind. The writer had just gone through what can only be described as a heartbreak that knocks the air out of your lungs. Her ex left her for another woman just weeks before her sister's big day. And not just any breakup, she thought he was about to propose. That kind of loss doesn't just sting, it shatters. She still showed up for Jessica, still stood by her side, still smiled for the photos, even though her heart was probably still raw. But she did ask for one small thing, a symbolic gesture, something soft, gentle. She asked her sister to throw her the bouquet, a tiny spark of hope in the middle of emotional rubble. It wasn't about flowers. It wasn't even about tradition. It was about comfort, about being seen, about not feeling so invisible while nursing a broken heart. And Jessica said no, said she didn't want to damage the bouquet. Not only that, when the writer asked if she could just hold it, just for a picture, Jessica still refused, as if lending the bouquet would somehow take away from the magic of her day, as if the writer's grief was an inconvenience. But here's where the writer showed something that often goes unnoticed in these stories. Restraint. She didn't make a scene. She didn't beg. She didn't guilt her sister. She swallowed that moment, tucked it away quietly, and let Jessica have her day, even if it meant hurting in silence. Fast forward to now. The writer's wedding is just days away. Her moment, her celebration, her turn to be in the light. And suddenly Jessica wants a piece of the spotlight. Jessica is pregnant, and she wants to announce it at the writer's wedding. Not privately, not quietly, in front of everyone. Let that sink in. She wants to stand up in the middle of someone else's milestone and redirect the attention, turn the focus, make the memory not about the bride and groom, but about herself. And so the writer says no, and not just no, but no, and here's why. Because this wedding isn't a stage for anyone else's news. Because 2 years ago, when the writer needed a sliver of kindness, Jessica gave her nothing. And now suddenly Jessica expects grace? The response? Jessica calls her ridiculous. Their mother says she's being childish. But is she? Or is this the first time the writer is drawing a line? Because this isn't just about a bouquet. And it's not just about a pregnancy announcement. It's about balance. It's about how certain people always seem to think they're entitled to the main stage, no matter the occasion. About how some people, no matter how much space you give, always want more. The writer's wedding is not a do-over for someone else's lack of empathy. It's not a shared platform. It's a moment that belongs to two people, her and her fiancé. And in a world where women are constantly being told to step aside, to be understanding, to not make waves, the writer's no is more than just a boundary. It's a reclaiming. And what's telling here is how fast her no got labeled as childish, as if setting a limit after years of quiet is somehow a tantrum. But here's the truth. There's nothing wrong with remembering who showed up for you and who didn't. There's nothing petty about expecting reciprocity, especially when it comes to the people closest to you. And there's definitely nothing wrong with not wanting your once-in-a-lifetime moment hijacked by someone who couldn't be bothered to hand you a bouquet when you were crumbling. So no, writer, you're not being an asshole. You're not even being harsh. You're just finally asking the people in your life to match your energy. And that's long overdue. Am I the asshole for not letting my niece near my daughter's cake? Birthdays. For a child, they are pure magic. The lights dim, the room hushes, candles flicker, and for a brief, shining moment, the world sings just for you. It's a ritual, a rite of passage, even when you're just 1 year old. And that's what the writer wanted for her daughter. Her very first birthday, her first memory, even if only through the photos and videos where she was the center of attention, not by force, not by performance, but by right. It was her day. Now let's talk about the dynamics here. The writer, 26, shares a life with her husband, 30, and together they have a 1-year-old daughter. Their family circle? Small. His family is really the only family they celebrate with. So every birthday, every holiday, every milestone, it's all with his side. And in that circle, there's the niece, almost 3 years old, daughter of the husband's sister. And she is the undisputed main character of every single event. Not just birthdays, every gathering. Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, Easter, it doesn't matter. She takes over. Every time dessert comes out, the family sings happy birthday to her, even if it's someone else's birthday, especially if it's someone else's birthday. She sits in the birthday person's lap, she has her name sung, she blows out the candles, and this isn't just once or twice, this is tradition at this point. Now, the writer, she's kept her mouth shut. No snide remarks, no confrontation, just silent judgment like a lot of us do. But internally, she's been collecting these moments. And when her daughter's first birthday came around, she made a quiet but firm decision. Not this time, not today. She told her husband ahead of time, this moment belongs to our daughter, not to a toddler who already steals every spotlight, not to family pressure. This time, we do things differently. And then the moment came. The room quieted. The cake was brought out, and like clockwork, the niece marched over, ready to claim her throne in front of the candles. But this time, the writer's husband stepped in, picked her up, moved her aside, told her gently, "You're not going near the cake." And what happened next? Chaos. The niece wailing, crying, screaming loud enough to stop the party dead in its tracks. No one could sing. The celebration halted. And the family? They turned on the writer and her husband like they'd committed some kind of crime. Just let her stand in front of the cake. What's the big deal? Let her blow out the candles. But the writer held the line that no one else seemed willing to hold. Her mother-in-law had to take the niece outside just so the birthday song could happen in peace, just so the writer's daughter could have her 1 minute of recognition. But even then, it came with guilt, with tension, with whispers. The whole family acting like the writer had somehow ruined everything by expecting a child to celebrate her own birthday without being overshadowed. And here's the thing. The writer knows the optics. She knows her daughter is only 1. She knows people might say she won't even remember this, but that's not the point. This wasn't just about one birthday. It was about setting a tone, about building a pattern, about showing her daughter from the very start, you matter. Your moments are yours. You don't always have to step aside to keep the peace. The writer remembers what it felt like to have other kids blow out her candles, to feel like her special day was never really hers. It might seem small to others, but to a child who grows up internalizing that they don't get to have the spotlight, it adds up. And she refuses to pass that down. She's not trying to change how her sister-in-law parents. She's not trying to change the niece, but she is saying, not on my daughter's birthday. And for that, she's being called ridiculous. Too serious. The problem. But let's be real. Is it so ridiculous to want one unshared moment for your own child? Is it really that outrageous to say, this one time, it's not about your kid, it's about mine? Because if we can't even grant a 1-year-old her own cake, what are we teaching? So no, writer, you're not being the asshole. You're being a mother who made a quiet stand for her child's joy. And honestly, that's not ridiculous. That's brave. Am I the asshole for taking my daughter somewhere when my husband and sons went on a boys' trip? Sometimes the smallest moments reveal the biggest fractures. And what might seem like just a weekend trip to others can echo a much deeper divide. The writer, a 43-year-old mother, has triplets, Mark, Liam, and Abby, all 14 years old, 3 children born on the same day, 3 lives raised side by side, and yet one was left out. It all started last Friday. The writer's husband, Josh, 45, decided to take their sons on a spontaneous trip to Six Flags, one of those last-minute, let's pack the car and go kind of trips. No planning, no warning, just father and sons, a boys' trip. Now, the writer, she didn't mind being left out. She's not a fan of amusement parks, and this wasn't about her. But then there was Abby, their daughter, their other triplet, their sister. Abby, naturally, wanted to go. She asked, she hoped, but the response? You'd ruin the vibe. Mark and Liam shut her down, brushing her off like an inconvenience instead of their own sibling. And Josh, he didn't step in. He didn't say, come on, let your sister come. He didn't offer an alternative. He let the boys draw the boundary line, and Abby was left on the outside of it. Let that sink in. 3 kids, 1 birthday, 1 family. But when it came to fun, only 2 got to go. And so Abby was left behind, hurt, excluded, and understandably upset. And the writer, as any mother would, saw her daughter's sadness and chose not to ignore it. She didn't try to toughen her up or tell her to get over it. She saw the wound, and she tried to show her she mattered. She planned a weekend, not a revenge trip, not a competition, just a simple day filled with love and intention. On Saturday, they went to Cheesecake Factory, a shared favorite. They hit the spa, a little pampering, a little laughter, a shopping spree that cost $150, not thousands, just enough to let Abby pick out a few things that made her smile. And then a moment that will stick with both of them for years. Build-A-Bear. They made each other bears. That's not just cute, that's bonding. That's a mother telling her daughter, I see you, I hear you, you belong. Sunday came, and with it, a quiet brunch. Nothing extravagant, just more time together. And for that one weekend, Abby didn't feel like the odd one out. She felt loved, chosen, seen. But then the boys came home. Abby, glowing from the weekend, excitedly told Josh everything. And instead of a smile, instead of, that sounds like fun, honey, she got anger. Josh was mad. He confronted the writer, told her she shouldn't have done all that it was special treatment, that she was spoiling Abby for not being included. Let's pause there. A father takes his sons away on a special trip, leaves their sister behind, no compromise, no alternatives, and then gets angry when her mother dares to lift her up and remind her that she's not less than. What exactly was she supposed to do? Let Abby mope around the house, watching the clock until her brothers came home with stories of roller coasters and cotton candy? Josh couldn't even explain why it bothered him. He just got cold, distant. At one point, he even tried to take Abby's bear away. Seriously? A grown man trying to take a stuffed bear from his teenage daughter just because she had a nice weekend with her mom? That's not discipline. That's not balance. That's pettiness, and it's painful. Now, the writer is left wondering, was I wrong? Did I go too far by making my daughter feel special for once? But let's be real here. No, this wasn't about spending money. It wasn't about competing with the boys. It was about a daughter who was made to feel like she didn't belong, and a mother who refused to let that feeling take root. When a child is excluded, you don't double down. You don't punish them for their pain. You show up, you reassure, you remind them that they matter just as much. And the truth is, this story says less about the writer's choices and a whole lot more about Josh's. His silence when the boys excluded their sister, his coldness when she found joy without him, his refusal to admit that maybe, just maybe, he messed up. So no, writer, you are not the asshole. You're a mother who watched one of her children get left behind, and instead of letting it go, you did something about it. You gave your daughter a weekend filled with love, laughter, and yes, belonging. And if anyone's threatened by that, they should take a hard look in the mirror, not at the bear. Am I the asshole for giving my boyfriend food to take to work, even though he works with my ex-husband? Small towns have long memories, and even longer shadows. In places like that, your past doesn't just disappear. It lingers, it whispers, it finds its way into conversations, into lunch breaks, into jokes shared between coworkers in dusty hangars and engine-scented workshops. The writer, 26 years old, has lived a full life already. She spent 4 years married to a man she once shared everything with. They divorced, not in a blaze of chaos, but through a quieter kind of heartbreak. The kind where you realize your futures just don't align. She couldn't have children. And for her, that was okay. She made peace with that reality. But her ex-husband, he couldn't. He had this aching need to have a mini-me, to pass on some imagined legacy. and when biology didn't cooperate, their marriage couldn't survive it. It's painful, sure, but it's also freeing because now the writer has found someone new, someone gentler, kinder, someone who makes her feel like she's enough just as she is. And here's where things get tangled. You see, her boyfriend, this kind, supportive man, works in the same place as her ex-husband. They're military contractors working on airfields in a town where everyone knows everyone. It's not quite next cubicle over awkward, but it's close enough that their social circles overlap in the break room. And here's the kicker. The writer has a gift. She's not just someone who enjoys cooking and baking. She's taken extensive culinary classes, and her creations, they don't just fill bellies. They win hearts. Even her ex-husband's coworkers used to love the things she made when she was still married to him. So when she started dating her current boyfriend, ironically another mechanic working in the same place, she picked up right where she left off. She started packing his lunches, sending baked goods, just like before. No hidden agenda, no spite, just a woman sharing something she's good at with someone she loves. But in that break room, in that male-dominated environment full of locker room humor and bruised egos, it didn't go unnoticed. Her ex-husband started getting teased for being dumped, teased for being replaced, teased for how she upgraded, because truth be told, her new boyfriend is objectively more attractive. The guys at work, they noticed and they talked. Now her ex is the punchline, a walking reminder that not only did he lose his wife, but she left him for someone hotter and still sends cookies to the same damn workshop. And now, he sent her a long message, asking her to stop sending food, stop being talked about, stop showing up in his life, even if indirectly. Oh, and don't come to the annual 4th of July thing either, by the way. Let's pause right here. This isn't about cookies. This isn't about muffins or lunches or pastry trays. This is about control. Her ex-husband is embarrassed. He's losing social ground at work, and instead of dealing with that reality like an adult, instead of laughing it off or brushing it aside, he's asking the writer to shrink herself to protect his pride. And that's where the real conflict is. Because the writer, she's not trying to start drama. She didn't go out of her way to rub anything in his face. She's just living her life, happily, for once. She's sharing a skill she loves with someone who appreciates it. She's moved on. But the past, it doesn't like being left behind, especially when it feels overshadowed. And here's the thing. Her boyfriend doesn't mind. In fact, he thinks it's funny. He's not asking her to stop. The only person who's uncomfortable is the ex. So is the writer the asshole? No, absolutely not. She is not responsible for how her ex-husband feels when other people make jokes. She didn't mock him. She didn't taunt him. She didn't go to his job and hand feed cookies to the guy in front of him. She just did what she always does. She loved through food. And the fact that it's now a problem says more about his ego than her actions. If anything, this is a lesson in maturity. Because real closure isn't just moving on, it's letting others move on too. And if your pride can't handle your ex doing well, then maybe it's not her behavior that needs adjusting, it's yours. So no, writer, you're not the asshole. You're just a good woman with a mixing bowl, a kind heart, and a new life. And if your ex can't take the heat, well, maybe you shouldn't hang around the kitchen. Am I the asshole for wanting to end a 10-year happy marriage because my husband continued a kink without my consent? This one isn't just emotionally loaded, it's gut-wrenching. The kind of post where every word feels like it's been written through a trembling hand. The writer, a 33-year-old woman, shares a decade-long love story that is now sitting on the edge of a cliff. And the reason? Something that started as a consensual kink turned into a betrayal that's hard to put into words. Let's start with the foundation. The writer and her husband have known each other for 12 years, married for 5, together for 10. 2 kids, 5 and 10 years old. That's a whole lifetime they've built. Birthdays, family traditions, inside jokes, shared memories, the kind of life many people dream about. But things aren't always as perfect as they seem on the outside. They had their rough patches, normal things, mismatched libidos, diverging life goals, the usual wear and tear of a long-term relationship. Then they explored a kink. And this is where it all begins to unravel. The kink, it's sometimes known as somnophilia, where one partner initiates intimacy with the other while they're asleep or pretending to be. In this case, it was fully consensual at first. The writer, trusting her husband, allowed it, experimented with it, even found it exciting in those early stages. They played with the boundaries, laughed about it afterward. It wasn't just a kink, it was something intimate they shared, something private. But here's where it turns. The writer started feeling off, emotionally disconnected. She wasn't remembering the encounters, wasn't participating in them mentally or physically. It became the only way her husband wanted intimacy. The real alarm bells went off when she realized she didn't feel like a person in their bedroom anymore, just a prop, a body. And that's when she put her foot down. She explicitly told him to stop, not gently, not vaguely. She forbade it. She told him it made her feel violated, disconnected, like she didn't matter anymore. And for a while, it seemed like he listened until 3 days ago. She had gone out with friends, drank lightly, came home, and woke up the next morning with that all too familiar feeling, that gut instinct. Her body felt off, tender, sensitive, a certain smell. Something told her that something had happened. And when she confronted her husband, he lied. Not for long. The truth spilled out fast, but not with tears or remorse. No, with laughter. Let that sink in. She set a clear boundary. He crossed it, twice, then laughed it off. He gave excuses, said she was hard to initiate things with, that maybe her no was part of the kink, that he thought maybe she was still playing along. He even claimed she might have been awake the night before. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a man, a husband, ignoring a very direct emotional plea from his wife. Not once, but twice. And the fallout? It's chaos inside the writer's heart. Because how do you reconcile something like this with the man who has held you during panic attacks, the man who's raised children with you, who makes you laugh, holds your hand in the car, plays with the kids like everything is fine? The betrayal isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's the shattering of a trust so deep it's left the writer emotionally unanchored. She even confesses this isn't just about the kink. It's stirred up trauma from her past, childhood sexual abuse, pain she thought she had buried. Now it's clawed its way back into her life, all because the one person she trusted most ignored her when it mattered most. She's drowning in doubt, confusion, guilt, wondering if she's overreacting, asking if this can be fixed, questioning whether to break up her family, end her marriage, over what her husband insists was just a misunderstanding. But let's be real, there's no kink without consent, period. The minute she said no, everything after that wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice, a selfish, destructive choice. And yet, here's what breaks me. She still loves him. She admits it, says they have a great life. She's torn between walking away from a man who crossed a line and mourning the life that line has now broken. That emotional dissonance is raw and honest, and it's so painfully human. She's taken the first step, sleeping in a different room, locking the door. It may feel dramatic, but it's not. It's survival. It's a woman reclaiming her right to feel safe in her own body, her own home. Now, am I asshole for kind of wanting to end a 10-year marriage over this? Absolutely not. Writer, you're not overreacting. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're a person with feelings, boundaries, and trauma that was deeply reawakened. Your hurt is real. Your confusion is valid. And your right to walk away from someone who broke your trust, even someone you love, is undeniable. This isn't just a marriage on the rocks. It's a woman standing at the edge of a storm, holding shattered pieces of herself and trying to decide whether it's worth rebuilding or walking away before she loses more of who she is. No. You're not the asshole. You're someone who's been hurt. And now you're trying to figure out how to heal. And maybe that healing starts with letting go. Arsh, am I the asshole for throwing a cup of cold water on my naked husband? So, imagine standing half asleep, maybe still shaking off a dream, and stepping into your bathroom expecting a warm, gentle stream of water to wake you up. Instead, bam, you're blasted in the face with a freezing cold torrent from the shower head you didn't even turn on. That jarring, miserable moment when your body tightens, your breath catches, and your entire morning is ruined before it begins. Now, Imagine this has been happening for 20 years. That's where the writer finds herself. 20 years. 2 full decades of begging, reminding, pleading, asking, trying, all for her husband to do one simple thing: push down the shower diverter valve. And for those who might not know, the diverter valve is that little rod or lever you pull up to make water go through the shower head instead of filling the tub. Once you're done, you're supposed to push it back down so the next person doesn't get an unexpected Arctic blast to the face. Basic, common courtesy. And yet, it's become the hill the writer is apparently dying on. Her husband doesn't have ADHD, though he's been tested, but he says the mere idea of lists, schedules, alarms, or anything remotely proactive causes him actual discomfort. Instead, he lives in what sounds like a perpetual game of emergency whack-a-mole. But let's be real, this isn't a neurological disorder. This is willful negligence dressed up in excuses. And despite his endless apologies, despite his working on it, promises that sound more like broken records than genuine growth, nothing changes. So today, she snapped. After being greeted yet again by the freezing betrayal of a misaligned shower, the writer decided she was done begging. She grabbed a cup, a plastic cup, filled it with a few inches of cold water, and walked directly to her husband, who had just taken off his pajamas and was standing there completely naked. And without a word, she launched that icy water directly onto his chest and face. And here's the thing, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about humiliating him. It was about sending a message loud and clear in the only language he seems to understand: consequence. For 20 years, her words have failed. So now, she's speaking in ice. She laid it out bluntly. His apologies were worthless. His "I'm improving" rhetoric was meaningless. And from now on, if she's getting a cold shower, so is he. She's done being treated like a second-class citizen in her own home. If he refuses to change to treat her better, then she will change to stop tolerating being treated worse. Now, before anyone rushes to call her an asshole, let's pause. Let's look at what this really is: a breaking point. Because this isn't about a cup of cold water. This is about years of emotional labor, years of repeated, ignored requests, years of feeling like your comfort is a footnote in someone else's daily routine. This is about being unheard, dismissed, and expected to just deal with it forever. She even took time to address common rebuttals. Why doesn't she just check the diverter herself before turning on the water? Why expect her husband to leave it down? Simple, because he found it that way. She always leaves it pushed down. She's not asking him to go above and beyond, just to put it back the way he found it. That's not asking for luxury, it's asking for baseline respect. But he doesn't. He leaves it up. He leaves tasks incomplete, 10% undone, always just enough to make it her problem. And while it might sound petty to some, it's never just about the diverter. It's the pattern, the message it sends, the slow erosion of respect and consideration over 20 years. And let's talk about the cold shower itself. She's not jumping in fully dressed. She's leaning in to turn the knob, expecting the water to come from the faucet. Instead, she gets blasted from overhead. Anyone who's ever made that mistake knows the shock of it. Now imagine that again, and again, and again, for decades. At what point do you stop asking and start demanding? At what point do you say enough is enough? The writer's choice to fight ice with ice may not be conventional, but it's not abusive, it's not cruel, it's a cry for accountability. It's the physical manifestation of a boundary that's been crossed too many times. And honestly, it might be the only thing that gets through. So, is she an asshole? Maybe technically, but a justified one? Absolutely. Because sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop speaking softly and start throwing cold water. And sometimes, it's not about being nice, it's about finally being taken seriously. And for the first time in 20 years, I think he finally felt the weight of what she's been saying all along. Am the asshole? Or just a woman finally refusing to be ignored? Let us know in the comments, because sometimes the petty is the powerful. Am I the asshole for leaving a first date because she showed up with her kid without telling me? Dating in 2025 is already a mess. You sift through endless profiles trying to dodge catfish, situationships, and people who treat real connection like a side quest. But the writer? They were clear from the start. upfront, honest. The kind of person who knows what they want and what they absolutely don't. A few weeks back, the writer matched with a woman on a dating app. They hit it off, chatted for a bit, and eventually the topic came up. She had a child from a previous relationship. Now, here's where the writer laid it all out on the table. They weren't looking to step into a parenting role, especially not for someone else's child. And you'd think at that point they'd go their separate ways, right? But no, she said she wasn't looking for that either. Just two people getting to know each other. Casual, light. So they kept talking. Seemed harmless enough. Eventually, they made plans to meet up for a first date, and here's where it takes a hard left. The writer shows up at the agreed location, maybe a little nervous, a little hopeful, like anyone on a first date. But instead of finding her there solo, ready for that connection they both agreed on, she's standing there with her child. Not a word. No heads up. No, hey, just so you know, I'm bringing my kid. Nothing. The writer freezes. They're caught in this strange, surreal moment, trying to process what's happening from a distance. And after a minute of standing there, completely blindsided, they decide to walk away. Just like that. Turn around, leave, block, delete the app. And honestly, who could blame them? This wasn't about being cold or heartless. It wasn't about hating kids. It was about trust, about boundaries, about respect. The writer had one very clear boundary, and not only was it ignored, it was dismissed so thoroughly that this woman thought it would be fine to just show up with her child. No context, no warning. That's not just inconsiderate, that's manipulative. Maybe she assumed the writer wouldn't make a scene in front of the kid. Maybe she thought the writer would feel obligated to stay. But either way, she put her own needs ahead of mutual understanding. And that's not how relationships, or even first dates, should start. And now, the writer is left wondering, was that too harsh? Was it the right move? Am I the asshole for walking away like that? Let's be real. The writer was upfront, honest, clear about their limits, and that clarity was met with deception. Even if the intention wasn't malicious, the impact was real. It turned what should have been an honest first date into a test of patience and personal values. This wasn't a casual mistake, it was a breach of trust. So no, the writer is not the asshole here. If anything, they dodged a major red flag wrapped in a teddy bear and some vague explanations. Walking away wasn't cruel, it was self-respect. And for anyone listening who's been in the same shoes, asked for something simple and reasonable only to be steamrolled, this is your reminder. Boundaries are not up for negotiation. Not on date one. Not ever. Am I the asshole for being unwilling to compromise on a baby name? Naming a child should be one of those rare magical parts of parenting. A moment where two people imagine the future, whispering names into the silence as if calling forth a soul from the stars. But for the writer, it hasn't been magical at all. No sweet anticipation, no mutual dreaming, just 8 long months of tension, tears, and a growing chasm between two very different visions of what it means to name a life. The writer is 31, expecting her first child. Her husband, 32, is just as much a part of this journey, but they're not walking side by side anymore. They're tugging on opposite ends of a name, and that rope is fraying fast. It's not about who loves the baby more. It's not even about whose taste is better. It's about meaning, it's about legacy, and it's about control. The writer's taste leans toward the timeless. Names like Martin, Silas, Calvin, names with weight, history, quiet strength. The kind you'd find etched on an old family tree or tucked into a worn leather book. Names that don't shout for attention, but endure. Her husband? He wants something unique, personal, something that sparks. He's thrown out suggestions like Artemis and Intrari, ripped straight from the pages of his favorite fantasy stories. But here's the thing, one of those names literally belongs to a fictional assassin, and that's not poetic to the writer. That's jarring, confusing. Not the kind of association you want hovering over your child's identity for the rest of their life. But the heart of the issue runs deeper than style. This isn't just a naming disagreement, it's a growing fear, an emotional erosion. The writer can feel it. This precious moment, one she's waited for her whole life, is being chipped away. The excitement, fading. The joy, shadowed. She even admits she's less and less excited about the baby's arrival, not because of the baby, but because of the constant battle wrapped around their name. Let that sink in. This woman is carrying a child inside her, and instead of being supported, she's arguing over syllables with the person who should be her teammate. And then there's the part that cuts the deepest. The child will automatically get the father's last name. No negotiation, no debate. A centuries-old default that passes down without question. And so in a moment of frustration and emotional honesty, the writer offers a trade. You can have your first name if the baby gets my last name. It wasn't meant to be literal. It wasn't about possession. It was about balance. About showing her husband what this feels like, to be pushed out of a decision that shapes a child's identity forever. But he didn't get it, or worse, he refused to. Instead, he brushed it aside, just like he's brushed off every single one of her name suggestions. And the writer? She's left clutching a list of names she's held in her notes app since she was a teenager. Names tied to memories, dreams, futures imagined long before this moment even arrived. And now it feels like she might have to give all of that up or brace for a tug of war in the hospital room. Her husband claims he doesn't want to sigh in distaste every time he calls their child's name. But what about the writer? What about the way her heart will sink every time she says the name he forced through? What about the years of compromise she'll carry in silence? So, is she the asshole? Absolutely not. This is not about being stubborn. This is about being silenced. About fighting for your voice in one of the most intimate decisions a parent will ever make. Wanting to name your child something that feels right to you isn't selfish, it's sacred. The writer isn't demanding full control. She's asking for a partnership. She's asking to be heard. And in return, all she's gotten is resistance, rejection, and a slow unraveling of the excitement she should be basking in. If anything, the real question should be asked of the husband. Why is he so unwilling to meet her halfway? Why does his fantasy trump her reality? Compromise is possible, but it takes respect. It takes empathy. And it takes both people being willing to let go of the sword they're gripping so tightly for the sake of the child they're about to bring into the world. Because that child, they deserve a name spoken with love, not resentment. Am I the asshole for refusing to go on the family vacation because I'm tired of always covering the extra costs? Family vacations. Supposed to be about laughter, sandy toes, shared memories under the sun. But for the writer, it's starting to feel less like a getaway and more like a bill she's expected to quietly pick up year after year. The writer, 34, is the responsible one. That title handed to her not as a compliment, but almost like a burden. She's got a stable job, no kids. She saves her money. She doesn't live paycheck to paycheck or drown in chaos. And somehow, because of that, her family has decided that her wallet is a communal resource. Her younger brother, 31, and his wife, 29, have 3 kids and an endless stream of financial emergencies. But according to their mother, it's all just a phase. The problem? This phase has been going on for years. Let's rewind to last summer. The whole family rents a beach house every year, split equally in theory. In reality, that's not how it plays out. Last year, the brother couldn't afford his share until after the trip. And guess what? That magical repayment never came. The writer picked up the tab, not just for the house, but for groceries, gas, and even amusement park tickets, because heaven forbid the kids feel left out. And when she finally dared to speak up about it, her mother didn't say thank you. She didn't offer to chip in. No, she called the writer selfish. That's the word. Selfish. Let's pause there, let that settle. Because isn't it fascinating how quickly someone responsible becomes the villain simply for not wanting to be taken advantage of anymore? So here we are, a new summer, a new group cat, same beach, same cast of characters, same assumptions, but this time the writer does the unthinkable. She says no. She bows out, politely, firmly. She tells them if they can't afford the trip without her bankrolling half of it, maybe they shouldn't be going at all. Cue the meltdown. Her mother accuses her of punishing the kids. The brother throws around words like cold-hearted. Even her cousin, usually the quiet one, chimes in with that all-too-familiar guilt-laced suggestion, You could at least come and just not pay for extra stuff. But let's be real here. When has that ever worked? When has just don't pay actually meant not paying? Because we all know how the story goes. The kids show up without enough food or tickets, the parents conveniently forget their wallet, and the writer, she's expected to quietly save the day again and again while being told not to make a fuss. And now for saying no, for setting one boundary in a sea of blurred lines, she's the problem? Here's the truth. This isn't about one vacation. This is about years of being the fallback plan, the dependable one, the bank account with a smile. It's emotional labor, financial strain, and slowly it chips away at the joy she used to feel about these trips. Because how can you relax when you're mentally calculating receipts, wondering what guilt trip will come next? No, the writer isn't punishing anyone. She's stepping out of a role she never signed up for. She's saying, this isn't sustainable, and she's doing it without bitterness, just exhaustion. It takes strength to say no, especially when the people who benefit from your silence cry the loudest when you finally speak up. So is she the asshole? Absolutely not. She's not abandoning her family. She's reclaiming her peace. She's drawing a line and saying, I deserve a break too. A break from being the fixer, the funder, the one who always has to choose between her values and their comfort. And if they can't see that, maybe they were never really on vacation with her. They were just along for the ride. Am I the asshole for not telling my girlfriend I'm bisexual? So let's set the stage. The writer, a 21-year-old man, wasn't trying to hide anything. He was just flipping through old memories with his girlfriend, laughing over childhood differences, comparing growing up in England versus Scotland. You know, the kind of casual, harmless nostalgia that couples bond over. But sometimes, memories hold more than just laughter. As they scrolled through pictures of the writer and his teenage friends, one particular photo made his girlfriend pause. It was innocent to him, just a moment with a close friend. The kind of photo you'd post without thinking twice, but to her, it sparked a question, a suspicion, and then came the moment. She asked about the guy in the picture. The writer didn't flinch. He answered casually, "That's my ex." And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. Now, here's where things get complicated. Not malicious, not deceitful, but complicated. Because the girlfriend wasn't just surprised to learn that the writer had an ex she hadn't heard about. It was that the ex was a guy. And suddenly, a conversation about school uniforms and childhood friends spiraled into something far more emotional than either of them expected. She wasn't angry just because she hadn't heard about this ex. No, she felt lied to, betrayed. Even though, from the writer's perspective, he didn't hide it. He's bisexual, always has been. It just never came up. He thought it was obvious. He has pins of the bisexual flag. They openly admire male celebrities together. The very night they met, he was lightheartedly flirting with her male friend before they even started dating. But she didn't see those signs the way he did. She said he should have told her. That not telling her was the same as lying. That she couldn't believe he had been with a guy and just never said a word. And here's where it stings. She went on to say that she doesn't really believe in bisexuality. That it wasn't a good look for the community. That it was weird he had a boyfriend before. She even asked him if he was sure he wasn't just gay. Pause there. Imagine being told by someone you love that your identity feels like a bad look. That your truth, your full real self, is somehow threatening or untrustworthy or not quite real. And this from someone who insists they're not homophobic. The writer, clearly confused and hurt, kept trying to explain. He's bisexual. He likes men. He likes women. He's with her because he wants to be, not because he's unsure of himself, not because he's hiding from being gay. But she kept insisting she felt betrayed, that he had somehow misled her by never saying the words out loud. From his perspective, he wasn't hiding a thing. The relationship was a whirlwind from the start. They met, they clicked, and within a few days, she was staying at his place for a week. Time passed, love grew, but serious conversations, they got buried under the busyness of school, jobs, and trying to make limited time together count. Still, the writer acknowledges that maybe he should have mentioned it. Maybe it deserved a moment, even if it felt obvious. He's not perfect. He says that himself. He admits he's a little scatterbrained, not the best communicator. But malicious? No. Deceptive? Never. And here's the thing. He loves her. Fiercely. Wholeheartedly. He's not sneaking around. He's not distracted by fantasies of someone else. He's all in. But it feels like she's pulling away. She keeps repeating that he lied, that she's not a beard, as if his past invalidates their present. He's scared. Not because he's ashamed of who he is, but because he might lose the woman he loves over something that's never felt like a secret to him. He's hurt, confused, and trying to bridge a gap that suddenly feels insurmountable. And then the comment section weighed in. Some strangers accused him of spreading STDs. Others said he should have taken her feelings more seriously. And many called her out, calling her biphobic, maybe even homophobic. But the writer, he's not ready to throw that label on her. He sees someone emotional, someone who lashes out when she's hurt, but not someone hateful. He wants to talk, to clear the air, to be heard, to explain that bisexuality doesn't mean he's going to cheat, or that he's lying, or that he's confused. It just means he's bi. That's it. That's the beginning and end of the story. And for the record, he's never had traditional sex with a man. He's been with only 2 people in his life, his ex-boyfriend and his current girlfriend. That's it. No wild history, no secrets. Just a young guy trying to love someone fully while being fully himself. So, am I the asshole for not telling my girlfriend I'm bisexual? From where I sit, no. The writer wasn't malicious, wasn't hiding anything with intention. But yes, relationships thrive on communication, and maybe this one needed a clearer conversation earlier on. Still, forgetting to mention something isn't the same as lying. This situation isn't just about identity, it's about fear, love, insecurity, and whether 2 people can really see each other, even when their histories differ. Hopefully, the writer's girlfriend will listen, and hopefully both of them will remember what matters most. Honesty, yes, but also compassion. Am I the asshole for staying married to my husband only because he was diagnosed with terminal cancer? Let's take a breath here, because this one isn't your average he said, she said kind of ish. This one is heavy. The writer, over 50 now, has been married to Adam, a man she spent 2 decades of her life with, 20 years of shared space, routines, small fights, family holidays, and life. But despite all that time, something had slowly eroded. Love didn't implode. It faded, quietly, bit by bit, not with scandal, not with betrayal, but with distance. A familiar kind of distance, the one that creeps in after years of unmet needs and unresolved silence. She was already planning her exit. Not impulsively, not recklessly, just ready. The marriage was no longer a partnership. She hadn't called a lawyer, but her heart had already packed its bags. Emotionally, mentally, physically, she was out. And then life happened in the cruelest way. October came and Adam, her husband, the man she was going to leave, was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer. In a matter of months, it progressed rapidly to stage 4. And just like that, the door she was planning to walk through slammed shut. Because how do you leave someone who's dying? How do you say, I'm done, when the person you're saying it to just got told they may not have much time left? So the writer stayed. Not out of love, but out of obligation. Guilt, sympathy, and a deep, suffocating sense that leaving now would make her the villain in everyone's story. Let's not sugarcoat this. She became his caregiver. She stepped into the role like it was a second skin. Cooking, driving, sitting beside him through treatments, smiling for friends and family, telling him I love you, even though her heart had long gone quiet. And everyone around her? They applauded. They called her strong, selfless, incredible. But inside, the writer is drowning in the weight of pretending, because what she hasn't told anyone, not even Adam, is that she already left him in every way but legally. She's staying because walking away now would feel monstrous, because without her, Adam would lose his insurance, because she doesn't want his final days to be filled with heartbreak and abandonment, because despite how disconnected she feels, she still has compassion for the man she once built a life with. But that compassion is a double-edged sword. She's trapped, and the guilt, it's eating her alive. She's not just mourning her husband's diagnosis, she's mourning the life she thought she'd have after leaving. A life that was almost within reach before fate ripped it from her hands. Then came the breaking point. One day, she's sitting alone in her car, crying, because sometimes the only safe place to fall apart is behind the wheel, parked in silence. And her sister-in-law spots her. She asks, "Are you okay?" And the writer, so full of pain she forgets to censor herself, responds, "Honestly, I was going to leave before he got sick." It slips out, a truth she'd never meant to share. And just like that, the sister-in-law goes silent. No words, no follow-up, just distance. And the writer, she's not even angry. She gets it. She feels like a monster. She's not proud of this. She knows how it looks. But what would telling Adam even do now? What purpose would it serve to say, "I was leaving you, but now I'm not because you're dying"? That would break him. So she keeps it buried, smiles through it, pretends for his sake. She lets him die believing he was loved through it all. And she asks, "Am I the asshole for staying married to my husband only because he was diagnosed with terminal cancer?" Let's sit with that. She's not asking if she's an angel. She's not even trying to make herself look good. She's asking, am I awful for not walking away when I wanted to? Am I wrong for choosing silence and care over honesty and freedom? This isn't a question about cheating or petty revenge or forgotten birthdays. This is about sacrifice, a deeply human kind of sacrifice, the kind where your own happiness is quietly placed on hold so someone else doesn't have to suffer more than they already are. And let's not pretend this is black and white. Was the writer wrong for not telling her husband the truth? Maybe. But was it the wrong kind of lie? Or was it an act of mercy? Because some truths do nothing but cause pain. Some truths, when spoken out loud, aren't liberating. They're cruel. Adam will pass thinking he was deeply loved, that someone stood by him through the worst of it. That even when life stripped him of his future, he still had his wife at his side. Is that so wrong? And let's not forget, the writer isn't walking away with a pot of gold. There's no life insurance payout. Adam was disqualified. There's no big financial windfall waiting on the other side. There's just grief, emotional wreckage, and a woman who is exhausted from carrying a burden she can't put down. So no. In my eyes, the writer is not the asshole. She's human, complicated, flawed, deeply conflicted, but not cruel, not heartless. She stayed when most would have run. She gave him dignity. She gave him comfort. She gave him a peaceful ending, even while hers was falling apart. That's not villainy. That's just one of the many quiet, painful shapes love can take when everything else fades away. Am I the asshole for pointing out that my boyfriend eats like the poor people of his country? This one isn't just about table manners. It's about class, culture, pride, and shame. The writer is dating a man whose story begins in the darkest corners of poverty. We're not talking about modest beginnings. We're talking extreme poverty, garbage site poverty, a childhood shaped by scarcity, survival, and the kind of reality most people in privileged places only ever read about in charity brochures. When he was just 8, his life changed. His mother married a foreign businessman, not some millionaire savior, but a man with enough stability to pull them out of that struggle, a man with enough to help them escape. So they moved, a new country, a new world. But no matter where he lives now, those early years, they didn't just shape him, they etched themselves into every part of who he is, including how he eats. And this is where it gets complicated. The writer tells us her boyfriend eats loudly. No, more than that, chaotically. He chews with his mouth wide open. He burps, he farts. He eats like he's fighting the food for survival. And when it's hot, he doesn't pause. He doesn't blow on it. He launches it in, and when it burns his mouth, he contorts. Loud, dramatic noises. Head tilted, mouth open. Guttural sounds that have strangers staring, sometimes in disbelief. At first, the writer was stunned. Who wouldn't be? But he told her simply, "It's cultural." So she let it go. For a while, she could tolerate it. At home, even at fast food joints, fine. But at someone's dinner party or at a nice restaurant where the clinking of forks and soft conversation is the norm, it became unbearable. People would whisper, stare, judge, and understandably, the writer began to feel embarrassed. She didn't go full etiquette police on him, though. She brought it up gently, more than once, and each time, he brushed it off, shrugged, dismissed it like it didn't matter. But here's the twist. Whenever he eats in front of his mother, he changes. He tones it down, the manners magically appear. Suddenly he eats normally, at least by the standards of their current country. So it's not that he can't do better, it's that he chooses not to. Months go by, and the couple travels to his home country, a powerful emotional trip. 2 weeks immersed in his roots. And while there, the writer sees something eye-opening. At the poorer restaurants, people eat like him, at least partially. There's more open chewing, spitting out bones, eating with intensity. But even they don't go to the same extreme as her boyfriend. He amplifies everything. When they go to more upscale places in that same country, the difference is night and day. The wealthier people eat more conservatively, quietly. They have manners in the way the writer's own culture would define it. So she starts to see the pattern. The class divide is not just about wealth, it's visible in how you eat. And her boyfriend? He seems stuck in a performance, an exaggerated version of what he grew up around. Like he's clinging to those roots, but twisting them into something bigger, louder. And here's the deeper layer. The writer notices her boyfriend's constant anxiety about money, his ambition to climb, to be somebody, to go on business dinners, to succeed in a world where presentation is everything. And yet, his refusal to adjust? It could sabotage the very success he wants. Still, she holds her tongue until one moment breaks the dam. Back home, they're out at a restaurant. In walks a group of very wealthy people from his home country, impeccably dressed, confident, composed. They sit near the couple, and he immediately points them out almost proudly. And as they eat quietly, mouths closed, controlled, polished. And the writer, unable to resist, says what she's been holding on to. See? This is what I meant. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. But it landed like a punch. Her boyfriend was furious, and now the writer's left wondering, am I the asshole for pointing out that my boyfriend eats like the poor people of his country? Let's pause, because this isn't just about table manners. It's about identity, about being raised in survival mode and trying to find your place in a world that plays by different rules. It's about pride. It's about trauma. And it's about perception. The writer didn't insult his culture. She didn't shame him in public. What she did do was confront a contradiction. He wants to be part of a world that judges how you carry yourself, but refuses to adapt the behaviors that matter in that world. He has the ability to adjust. He does it in front of his mother. So why not at a dinner party? Why not when he knows he's being watched? The truth is, maybe this isn't just about manners. Maybe this is about him drawing a line in the sand, saying, I won't change who I am, even if it costs me. But then, is it fair to expect your partner to carry that burden? To be the one fielding stares and whispers, silently praying he'd just close his mouth? This relationship is sitting at the crossroads of love, embarrassment, respect, and resilience. So no, the writer isn't heartless, and she's not shallow either. She didn't humiliate him. She voiced something that's been weighing on her, something that matters if they're building a future together, a future where he wants to move up, network, travel for business, but refuses to adapt in ways that open those doors. Was it poorly timed? Maybe. Could the phrasing have been more gentle? Possibly. But was it cruel? Not really. Was it necessary? That's the question. And sometimes the truth hurts, not because it's malicious, but because it forces us to confront the gap between who we are and who we're trying to become. Title, Am I the Asshole for Refusing to Share My Room with My Dad's Girlfriend's Daughter? Let's step into the life of the writer, a 22-year-old woman trying to balance university, a part-time job, and the emotional maze of growing up without her mom. The writer has lived with her dad all her life, just the two of them. A quiet, solid bond built over the years like bricks stacked in the aftermath of heartbreak. Her mother died when she was just 5, and since then, her room, her space, it wasn't just where she slept. It was sanctuary, safety. Her mother's memory echoes in the corners. That room meant something. Now, after nearly 2 decades of solitude and healing, her dad opens his heart again. He's finally dating. And the writer, she's genuinely happy for him. That's important. She's not bitter, not territorial. She wants him to find joy. That alone speaks volumes. But with new love comes new dynamics. His girlfriend is moving in with her 3 kids, a grown daughter who lives on her own, a teenage son, and then a 10-year-old girl who has her sights set on the writer's room. Let's pause right there. Not just her bed, not a bunk setup. Her entire room. A space she's called hers for her entire life. And this isn't just any 10-year-old. This kid is loud, energetic, curious to the point of being invasive. She digs through drawers, she touches things that don't belong to her. And as sweet as she might be, boundaries are, well, non-existent. The writer tried to be patient. She truly did. But imagine trying to study for exams with someone doing TikTok dances in the background, is waking you up early with chatter, walking in uninvited. It's not just annoying, it's exhausting, especially when you're barely holding it together between shifts at work and long nights with textbooks. And here's where things take a twist. The writer's father actually agrees with her. He gets it. He's not some oblivious parent choosing romance over his child. He's trying. He's suggesting that maybe the younger daughter take the guest room, or perhaps the son, who's completely fine with moving into the basement, could go there instead. But his girlfriend? Unyielding. She insists her son needs the guest room, won't budge, won't listen. Not to the writer, not even to her boyfriend. And that's when the writer begins to feel that creeping sensation that she's no longer a priority in her own home. And still, she didn't explode. She kept it together. Until, update, this story escalates fast. The writer, taking advice from those who saw the writing on the wall, sits her dad down for breakfast, a real heart-to-heart, and she lays it all out, her frustration, her exhaustion, her firm no. She won't take the basement, she won't move to the attic. This is her home too, and for once she says what she's been holding back. Not with cruelty, just honesty. Her dad listens, and something clicks. They head home after that emotional breakfast, probably thinking they still had time to discuss and plan. But what they find? The girlfriend has already moved the little girl's clothes into the writer's room, without asking, without waiting, without any consideration. That was it. That was the match to the fuse. The writer snaps, rightfully so. She screams at her dad's girlfriend for touching her space, her stuff, without permission. Her dad immediately steps in, tells her to take the kids and go out. And when they return, it's over. He broke up with the girlfriend. Turns out, the whole relationship may have had more strings attached than anyone realized. She was in debt, lost her home, and she needed somewhere to land. The writer's dad? She thought he was the safety net. But she misjudged him, and she underestimated his daughter. Oh, and just when you think the drama's done? Nope. The girlfriend had made her own key copy. They had to change the locks. Her ex-husband called, furious that she was dumped on him, his wife, and their other kids. The whole situation? A powder keg, and it exploded within one single day. Now the writer sits in her home, mind you, her name's on the title deed, and she reflects. It's sad. Her dad waited all these years to find someone. He tried, and it went down in flames. He says he's done with dating. He'd rather stay a widower than open up again and risk this kind of betrayal. The writer? She's frustrated, of course, but also resilient, defiant. She's not some lazy kid refusing to grow up. She chooses to stay because of love, not dependency. She wants to be close to her dad, and that should never be something she has to apologize for. And as for those telling her to move out because she's 25, she's not. She's 22. And even if she were 25, so what? She's working, studying, paying rent, supporting herself. Her home is stable. Her relationship with her dad is solid. Why is it so hard for people to believe a young adult might actually enjoy being close to their parent? So, is the writer the asshole for not giving up her room? No, absolutely not. She tried to be kind, she tried to be flexible, but what she was met with was entitlement disguised as compromise. Her room wasn't just four walls, it was history, grief, growth, a place where she learned how to breathe after loss, and nobody gets to take that away from her. Final thoughts? This wasn't just a room. This was about autonomy, boundaries, respect. And when those things are crossed, people get hurt. The writer drew a line, and when someone tried to bulldoze over it, she stood her ground. She didn't choose this chaos, but when it came to her doorstep, she handled it. Bravo to her. And her dad? He dodged a bullet.